Today we're going to be going over errors and omissions insurance, okay? And this is when people ask me what I do for a living, I tell them I'm a real estate broker. And they're like, oh, great. So you help people buy and sell properties. And I'm like, well, there's a small portion of that that is true. I still sell homes, even as the principal broker, trying to stay on top of what's happening in the market. I work mostly by referral and only do a handful of transactions annually. But the majority of my business is mostly dealing with legal issues, okay? So for you agents who have common questions, common legal questions, we usually take those to your branch broker. And then when the branch broker has a doozy, they usually take it to me. And that's mostly what I do, okay? So let's give some background on errors and omissions, okay? One of the classic phone calls that I probably get at least once a quarter is, Dave, I'm in a big legal issue. I need to use our errors and omissions insurance. And my quick answer is that's not how it works. If you're in a legal issue, we're going to follow typically what the contract says or what the agency agreements say. And let me ask you, first of all, what legal recourse is typically in our agency agreements if there's a dispute between you and your client? Do you know? Mediation is usually one of the first steps. A lot of our UAR approved agency agreements talk about arbitration. And then the very last step is litigation, okay? So if we can mediate, we will try to mediate. And these are common disputes where your client is frustrated with something you've done, okay? They felt like either during the transaction period or after, but typically after the transaction period is when they will come after you. They're upset at something that you've done while you were representing them, and they want some type of recourse. And that recourse is usually money, okay? Sometimes they'll feel like you screwed something up during the transaction where they didn't get what they wanted, or maybe they lost out on their earnest money and they feel like that was your fault, and now they're coming after you, okay? So if you haven't reviewed the dispute resolution sections of the agency agreements, please do so, okay? Now, let's go back to that phone call I get where they say, Dave, I need to use our errors and omissions insurance. I'll say, time out. Let's look at the situation. Let's find out what happened. Tell me the story, and they'll give me a whole story, okay? Sometimes, let me back up just a little bit. Sometimes I'll have somebody on the other side of the transaction reach out to me and say, hey, Dave, your agent's really screwed up, and I need to use your errors and omissions insurance to pay out my client. And I tell them the same thing. That's not how it works. What does your contract say? What does the dispute resolution section of the Rep C say? And then we'll take things in the proper sequence, okay? So, and sometimes I'll get attorneys who will call me, attorneys for the plaintiff or potential plaintiff, and will say, will you please give me your errors and omissions information? What do you think I tell them? I usually say no. Yeah, I say it's not how it works. And I'll say, tell me the story. Let me hear everything. I had one attorney who felt a little bit like the classic attorneys that you see up on the billboards. You know, we won't name any names. One call, I'll stop there. One call says it all. Your typical ambulance chasing attorneys who are reaching out and saying, hey, who do you guys use for your E&O carrier? I need your policy number. And I'm like, nope, I'm not sharing that information. Not yet, okay? So let's back up to dispute resolution, and then we'll get into when does errors and omissions insurance come into play, okay? So first off, I want to tell you all how amazing you are, okay? For a company our size, we stay out of legal trouble for the most part, okay? And the reason why I know this is we get to renew our errors and omissions in October every year. And I'm told the same thing from every insurance agency that we apply to, that for a company our size, we sure have a low number of claims, okay? And I applaud our branch brokers. Yeah, I applaud you agents and I applaud our branch brokers for doing an amazing job at handling legal issues before they go to errors and omissions, okay? So our goal, admittedly, is to keep our claims low. Why do you think? Cost, right? Insurance is insurance. And you've probably seen it with your auto and home. What have we seen in the last couple of years? 30+% increases. All of a sudden you get those renewals from your auto insurance carrier and you're like, whoa, you guys were hundreds of dollars cheaper. And now we're hundreds of dollars more expensive. What's going on? You know, between you and me, and this is maybe a small part of me that's a conspiracy theorist. I feel like all the big guys got together, State Farm, Allstate, and they're like, how do we raise our prices? And across the board, they just went. So the way that insurance works, though, is what happens if you get in a car accident and you make a claim. They're going to cover it, hopefully, right? Hopefully your insurance is good enough that they're going to cover it, and your premium's going to go up because they're going to offset the cost of risk, right? Because the game of insurance is looking at the risk, and they want to evaluate how risky is this client, okay? Even if it's not your fault. Yeah, in many cases. Yeah, yep. So do the same things apply to errors and omissions insurance? The answer is yes, okay? I can't even, I won't tell you the exact amount, but it is in the hundreds of thousands that Realtypath pays in premiums, not claims, in premiums annually to protect you all, okay? So just be aware it is of huge, huge expense, okay? Now, where it comes into play is where we've exhausted all legal measures and then we're finally served a suit, okay? I've had fun with attorneys before where they serve a suit and I go back to them and I say, did you read the rep C? And they go, yes. I'm like, did you read the dispute resolution part? And they go, yeah. And I'm like, did you see in there that it checked shall mediate? Why are you serving us a lawsuit if you haven't yet mediated? And I've pissed off some attorneys before where they have to put everything on halt, everything on pause, do the mediation process. And sometimes that's totally dissolved the lawsuit, okay? Yes, well, yeah, that's a very, we'll get there. We'll get there. Yep. So a lot of times you may attend continuing education courses where, you know, the educator will say something like, hey, I highly recommend that you always check shall. I won't necessarily give you my opinion, but I'm probably somewhere in the middle. I think there's some scenarios where checking shall makes sense. Does it give you a buffer before litigation? I believe so. However, there's a very last line in the Rep C that is very, very left to interpretation that basically says the very last line of the dispute resolution section says that if the buyer or the seller feel like they have to litigate, then they can. It's like, you may want to pull it up. I'm spitballing, okay? But it's basically a line that leaves it totally subjective, where you basically have the right to go and find an attorney if you want to. So I wish it wasn't written that way, but Josh, if you'll open up the Rep C, maybe we can review that. And I don't even mind pulling it up here on the big screen, okay? My personal opinion is if I were to lean one way, I'd probably lean to checking shall, but there are scenarios where, there are scenarios where having the ability to get an attorney and immediately litigate makes sense. But having the ability to mediate before you litigate is I think a great option, because sometimes things can be resolved in the process of mediation way before you get into a full-blown lawsuit, okay? So, and then once again, I'm kind of dogging on those ambulance chasing attorneys who, you know, they're just coming out of the gates firing, you know, and they immediately will file suit even before reviewing the real estate purchase contract and looking at the dispute resolution section. So Yeah, right here, this last line. Nothing in this section, whoop. Yeah, that's okay. Nothing in this section 15 prohibits any party from seeking emergency legal or equitable relief pending mediation. The provisions of this section 15 shall survive closing. So emergency legal relief, that's the claim that you could make to say, well, I just went and got an attorney. However, what is that all pending? It's pending, where'd it go, Josh? Up here. Pending mediation, right? So those attorneys, they're frustrated when I know my stuff. And I'm just like, you're fine to sue, but the contract says shall mediate, which means we're going to mediate beforehand. And we have been able to resolve things. So once again, hats off to you for keeping the claims low. Now, the course of action, if you run into a legal dispute, call your branch broker, try to work through it. One of the first things that will happen if this section is checked shall is you may hire a mediator. And if you're wondering where you can get a list of mediators, you can actually find those at the Board of Realtors. They have a whole list of mediators that you can choose from. The parties, both buyer and seller, have to come to an agreement on who they want to use, okay? And most mediators I've found are usually in the $500 to $1,000 range to mediate for a few hours. So it's not cheap, but it's not terribly expensive. And usually in that process of mediation, a lot of them will resolve. Not all of them, but a lot of them will resolve, okay? Now, where errors and omissions come into play is you've messed up, you've tried all other remedies prior to litigation, but litigation is still pending. And then what will happen is we will call our insurance agent. We'll let them know that we have a new claim. And here's the downside. It's a $5,000 deductible that you pay. Okay? This is another reason why we don't immediately go to E&O, because, and especially when I get that phone call, I'm like, you don't want to dish out $5,000. So the agent, you're on board according to your independent contractor agreement to pay $5,000 the deductible, okay? And then the good news is it does get handed over to an attorney, and that attorney will defend us until some settlement happens. In my 12 plus years of doing this, have I ever seen anything go to trial? No, I never have. And in fact, in the legal world, most attorneys rarely go to trial, like rarely, okay? Almost everything settles at some point in time, okay? Any guesses as to how long my longest E&O claim was open? So close, 6 years. 6 years. Little house out of Eden went on for 6 years. By the time we settled it, our real estate agent, she was no longer an agent. She had found a different business to get into. She's like, I haven't been an agent for 2 years, but she was so excited to have it finally resolved because that stuff is on your record. Like it pulls up sometimes as a judgment, and judgments on your record and credit claims and stuff like that. For you loan officers, sometimes you see stuff like that pop up and your borrowers have to give some type of explanation as to why they're in some pending lawsuit, okay? So anyway, we do everything possible to keep you out of making an errors and omissions claim. And we usually follow this. And even if they've hired an attorney, once we show this to an attorney and say, hey, you guys have to mediate beforehand, sometimes, if not often, mediation prevails, okay? So this is what I get to deal with. Now, let me tell you this, I'm gonna tell you the times that we most often get errors and omissions claims. Our last 5 claims have all been new construction. All of them, new construction. And here's the other thing that's going to blow you away. All of them are earnest money or construction deposit disputes. All of them, okay? Now, the ones previously that were not new construction, 90% of them are earnest money disputes, okay? So what I want to share with you today is how to stay out of making an E&O claim, okay? Number one, let's talk about these new construction ones. You're the listing agent, you're working with a builder. A builder's really excited because a buyer has come in and they say, I've got $150,000 to put down. And the builder's licking their chops. You're licking your chops. Sweet, we've got a solid buyer. Those new construction contracts have two places that say this money, big, black, bold, all caps, this money is non-refundable, okay? Let me ask you something. If your life savings is 150,000 and you've even signed that, are you just gonna freely give away your money if you decide to back out? I'm gonna give you a real case without telling you the details, because obviously we don't want to embarrass any of the agents involved. The buyer put down $150,000. Someone who puts $150,000 down is not just going to walk away from that, even if they've signed that they're willing to let that money go. Okay. So it was a combination. Earnest money. It was about 10 grand in earnest money and about 140,000 in construction deposit. Yeah, but it was a result of them selling their lifetime home and was basically their lifetime savings.
Is it like a custom home or a bigger home builder?
In this particular scenario, it was a custom home build. Yep. But I don't think it really matters. Even some of the bigger like tract home builders, your DR Hortons, your Lennars, Ivory, take your pick. You're putting that much money down with language that says this is non-refundable. You're asking for a lawsuit. So even if the person just gets cold feet and wants to walk away, and that's what happened in this scenario. They got cold feet, they wanted to walk away, and they just expected sympathy. We put this money down, we want it back. Well, what's the builder going to say? No, no. Now, I share this with you because if you ever run into this scenario, you don't need a lot of earnest money. Even if the buyer's saying, here's all my money, tell them you don't need to put that much down. 10 grand is enough. Josh and I have been over this. You actually have a personal experience. You want to share it real fast?
Okay, so I had a client, this is back when everyone was doing crazy deals, and he had a fiance that he was trying to impress, and so he's buying a home. She wanted this one home. I said, there's a lot of offers on the table. Here's what we're up against. Somebody else had 50,000 non-refundable earnest money, and he said, I need to get this home. I said, I would not do this if I were you. I said, how well do you trust your lender to provide these funds? Said, oh no, he's good. I'm like, I don't know who he is. If he says you're good and you're confident in that, you're walking away from $50,000 if this doesn't, pan out. He decides to move forward with that offer. He gets the contract, and then his lender comes back later and says, I don't think we can get this done in time, and I got an extension. And then they come back and said, you know what, this is gonna probably not work. I said, you guys told your client that you would be able to make this work, and now
you guys meaning the lender.
The lender told. And so I went to the client and said, hey, they're not gonna be able to perform. You have $50,000 on the line here. And I was like, our deadline for financing and appraisal is tomorrow, and so I don't trust that they're gonna be able to get this done in time. And so he calls them back and they said, oh no, they said they're gonna make it work. And I'm like, okay, I'm telling you right now, like I got it in writing, I texted, I emailed, just make sure I covered my back. And said, okay, I don't suggest you move forward, but if you feel confident and you trust that everything will go through, this is what you're risking. So the next day, we reach out to the lender and he said, hey, you know what? We overlooked something. We're not gonna be able to get you the loan at all. And so now we passed the deadline and he's not gonna be able to get it at all. He lost his $50,000 in that situation. Now, he doesn't blame me, but he wasn't happy of the situation regardless. So even if you're not in the wrong, you're gonna have that perception like, well, they're gonna associate that bad feeling to you regardless. And so try to push your clients as best away from putting a lot of money down on that situation. So the lender ended up giving him some money back. That was outside of my doing. I did get him another home, negotiated a good deal with him, so it kind of worked out a little bit. But no one likes losing $50,000, and so don't put extra funds down.
Now,
Just put 10 down or 20 down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So the moral of the story, let me back up before I answer that a question, okay? Here's the issue that Josh mentioned this, and Josh is fortunate because what usually happens, even if a buyer has no angst against you, okay, meaning that you're obviously not at fault as the agent, how does our legal system work? When a lawsuit comes down, who does the attorney name in the suit? Everybody. Yep. And they will specifically tell their clients. Sometimes we've had admissions of like where the client says, hey, I just want you to know, I've got nothing against you. I've got nothing against you, but my attorney said I needed to name you in this suit. Well, the tables turn quickly when there's a lot of money on the table. So the strongest recommendation that I have, especially if you're representing, let's talk about the seller side. This is hard to convince your builders. If you're working with new construction, it's hard to convince the builder, you really don't need $150,000 down. It's a tough conversation to have. Tell them about these lawsuits. Tell them about how long it gets dragged out. 6 years, I would say our average open case goes at least 2 years. Tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. So that 150 grand that this builder was so excited to have, quickly eaten up in legal fees, you know, all could have been remedied had there just been so much less money, okay? So, and this is what's funny. What I hate about our legal system is there's no winners. The only winners are the attorneys. At the end of the day, the plaintiff did get a payout. The insurance company did write a check. And that's why when you see all those billboards, you have all those ambulance chasing attorneys who they do it because they know insurance companies will pay out. The amount that he was paid out, and I can't disclose because we sign non-disclosures, was certainly much less than what he paid in attorney's fees over 6 years. But yeah, when I saw the payout, I was like, oh my goodness, there's no way that what he received was less than what he paid in attorney's fees over 6 years, okay? So the emotional turmoil, that's the first thing I'm gonna tell you. Being in a lawsuit for 6 years, and that poor gal who was our agent, and 2 of those years she was no longer licensed in a completely different industry, she was just like, huge burden lifted once this was done, you know? But I look at so many of these cases and realize that they could be prevented with so much less earnest money, okay? And I know at the end of the day, whose choice is it? It's not your choice, right? It's the client's. Both buyer and seller get to agree. But if you could share with both sides these stories, you could help a builder hopefully understand, like, I just don't need that much. I don't. You know, here's the other problem. If you're a builder, what happens in these situations are notices of interest, liens being tied to the property. Next thing you know, you can't even sell this property because it's all tied up in a lawsuit. Another reason to have so much less construction deposit and earnest money, okay? You just don't need enough. You need enough to say, okay, that stings if I walk away, but not enough to say, I'm gonna go sue them. Does that make sense? So just keep that in mind. Yes, right.
This gentleman's question. To your question, sir. Not to make David nervous, but I'm in my second new construction this year. And it's with a larger builder down in Eagle Mountain. And their new construction contract had actually a dichotomous statement about earnest money and new construction deposit and option deposit and all those things. And naturally, once we got that $9,500 bathtub in the options, they were looking for 200 and something thousand dollars of additional deposit. The construction company. And bottom line, everything in life is always negotiable. And David's point of managing customer expectations, both sides, because the builder and the builder's agent in this case is a customer of ours. And anyone who brings the cash to the table is always king or queen. And therefore that 280,000, we have an addendum that says 41,000 is the total amount of earnest money deposit for the entire transaction. Managing the expectations and everything is negotiable. And to David's point, this family doesn't have the means, nor do they want to put down 280,000 on this nearly $1 million home. And it's unwise to do that because of all these reasons that David said. What I'm encouraging is with now in my second, this year, new construction. It's actually quite easy if you just address it as David has encouraged, and communication up front. And I just said, Corey, I noticed in the contract that it says this, but it also says that. Naturally, we're going to add these options. We're going to reach a point where our earnest money agreement is going to be either invalid or infeasible. And he said, well, let's good. I appreciate you bringing that up. Let's cross that bridge when we get there. And the person with the money always has control.
Yep, thanks. Those are good thoughts. And Josh, I'm cutting into your time, so I'll wrap up. Here is some logistical things that you may be interested in, okay? So when we do our E&O renewals, one of the questions it asks is gross commissions. And we have to break down how many transactions we've done, we, meaning all agents, and the gross commission on those, okay? The number one thing that increases our E&O is a higher purchase price, okay? So the third element I didn't tell you about yet is that the majority of these E&O claims are higher homes, okay? Meaning higher purchase price, okay? There is a correlation. People with money have the means to sue, okay? And I remember asking that once because I was really frustrated. There was one year where our transaction count had gone down, but our gross revenues, our gross sales had gone up, and our policy went up. And I called our then insurance agent. I said, this doesn't make sense. If we're doing less, why is our overall policy cost increasing, our premium? And he goes, because your gross commissions have gone up. And he's like, there's a direct, and he goes, Dave, you may not know this, but there's a direct correlation between people who have money and the amount of lawsuits you have, okay? So if you've ever wondered why we have that little 1% fee above 12,000 in gross commissions, it's to help offset our E&O cost, okay? It's the higher home prices have a direct correlation with the number of E&O claims that we actually have, okay? So just a little logistical aspect of when we go to do the renewals, okay? Moral of the story, and then I'll switch over to Josh. If you're ever in one of those situations, not even new construction, but even a situation where you want to make your offer really strong, ultimately it is the buyer's decision, but warn them. Just say, you don't need 50 grand. You don't even need 25 grand. 10 grand is probably sufficient. 5 grand is probably sufficient, even on the higher end homes, okay? But if you're getting a conversation with the listing agent, and the listing agent is saying, a good chunk of earnest money is going to make your offer stronger, well, then, you know, it's still ultimately between the parties what they choose. But if you have sway, that's what you want to do. You want to be able to try to convince them and say, hey, these lawsuits happen, and they're usually tied to larger amounts of earnest money. Okay. Any questions before I switch over to Josh? Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you really said all you wanted to say about the may or shall option.
Yeah. If you're asking me my preference would be shall. Yeah,
Okay.
shall. Yep. Are there scenarios where may is good? Yes, but I think it's hard to know what the other side of the party, how temperamental they are, you know. Yeah, shall just gives you that first layer of protection. Sometimes you can negotiate things in mediation, but if you don't have shall checked, that gives both parties the right to just go out and litigate. So.
You say your mic now.
Yeah.
Oops. I'm actually gonna do it from computer. All right, so we're gonna go over some supply and demand stuff. Oh, that did not pull the right document. Okay. All right, so we've got some changes in the market. First off, we want to go with supply and demand and see what's happening in the market. So, Chris, are we sharing the screen? Is that showing up? Or can you see well with the,
I can zoom in on the camera or you can share it from your computer. What do you-
let's go ahead and have you zoom in just for ease. All right, so what we're seeing right here, you can see active listings in the supply. As you can see, they have gone up since, less than, about more than a year ago, and they're continuing to rise. This is the scale that's showing we are moving to a higher inventory market. Higher inventory. So as you come down here, you can see sold listings. As you see, the trend is going downward. So you're getting lower sales. So we are switching on more listings, less demand, which will correlate to a buyer's market. So right here, you can see at the bottom, as you can see, both graphs from absorption rate and months of supply, the absorption rate has dropped tremendously within the past, couple of years, but we're still seeing supply increase. So we are heavy into a buyer's market. So kind of keep that in mind when you're talking to your sellers and listings, and also your buyers, knowing whether to ask for concessions and how much.
Important in managing that expectation. When we say buyer's market, most typical humans think lower prices. That's not true.
Not directly, no.
Well, not at all. Because in Utah, what have the average prices done over the last 9 months? They're up 4%, I believe, over last year.
About 5, yeah.
Even though we've made this huge transition into quote unquote buyer's market. Therefore, my brother-in-law or my neighbor or whomever who's asking me says, okay, prices are down, right? But they're not.
I believe it's the Salt Lake Tribune that has a tool and you can look by city or zip code year over year on how prices have increased. And so that's something I'll send to people that helps.
And I think Josh is gonna go over, but I think we do have, the MLS has a good market stats year over year.
I'll show you guys how to access that as well.
Can we get a copy of this information?
I'm going to show you how to pull it, so then you can pull all sorts of data yourself. But yeah, you can download this just like I did right here. You guys have access to the MLS. So, so coming right here, so sold listings by price range. This I find fascinating. So you're seeing a lot more within the 300 to 500 price point, and then in 500 to 700, that's your bulk majority. So if you're looking, what kind of clients do I want to represent? If you're trying to represent the 200 to 300K, there's going to be less opportunity there for pricing, and you're not going to get a lot of sales most likely. Then you look at through 180 days, the difference from just the past 30 days, it's still pretty standard across the board. They look almost identical. So paying attention to where your potential clients are sitting is going to help you in figuring out where you want to spend most of your time. So breaking that down a little bit further here, you can see in the bar graph, the majority of this, almost, just 40% is going to be in the 300 to 500K price point. It's going to be an affordability. But if you add in the 500 to 700, you're almost to 70% right there. That's a huge portion of the industry. Now, here's a couple things that are interesting as well is you've actually seen price per square percentage change in the current year. You've actually seen a drop in the 300 to 500K here, but year to date, it's on the 3 million plus percentage. So interesting to see where the market is shifting with that per square footage. So you'll start to see some changes with that as well.
Does that mean that the $8 homes have been going down for a year and
Within the past year, yeah.
And the under half million started?
Yeah, so under 500,000, yeah, you're starting to see that is just started to make a downward trend.
Can I chime in on that?
Yeah.
This is obviously my personal opinion. I'll lean into you. Don't worry.
Not too close.
I think there's a lot of townhomes. I've got a client who's looking in townhomes, and this is why. I think there's a lot of townhomes and condos that have been overpriced. So it's interesting because usually if you see the outer ends, what do you usually recognize in statistics? They're outliers, right? But I think what happens is those who have big homes usually have unrealistic expectations sometimes of how much their home is worth. And that's one reason why we're seeing these larger homes dipping in price. I think on the low end, in my personal opinion, is those condos and townhomes that have been way overpriced and are finally normalizing. And that's why I think we're seeing them come down.
And you can actually, and I'll show you guys how to do that on the stats, how you can divvy that up on types of properties as well.
Right out of town on listing right now, so they're kind of anxious.
Okay,
This can help.
yeah. It's always much easier to explain something when you give them some graphs and data to help you justify where things are at, rather than saying, well, maybe you're the problem when it's not. Up back there, Ant.
Go over absorption reports too.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
So, all right, so right here, new listings and price per square footage. Don't pay attention to October because that's going to be an outlier because we don't have enough data to have it be accurate. But as you can see, we've had an increase in May, a slight decrease, but it's kind of steadying out right here. But then you also see the median price per square footage is slightly dipping. There's a slight dip. Now we've seen an increase in cost for homes in general, but price, per square footage has dipped. And that will, I think you have some of those outlying properties that were way too high, but it's not across the board. So, okay, so now we have the further median price versus average price. So these are pretty steady. You're seeing a slight dip. October, again, don't pay attention to October. You saw a slight dip, but it's pretty standard across. So you're not seeing any major changes, which, although it's turning to buyer's market based off demand, like what you said, is it's not going to be correlated directly with price as, hey, we can get an amazing deal and drop the cost. I am personally, and you guys can chime in, seeing a little bit more of people asking for some concessions. And so that's where I see it on the buyer side. Okay, I know they can ask for more concessions on that end. Okay. Any questions on this one?
This data show includes concessions, doesn't it? This data includes concessions.
I'm not sure.
So that is important. The data I've run for the last two clients, concessions are approaching 2% of sale price, is in comp sales.
Mhm.
And if you're listing a home, your seller has got to know and understand what that means to them.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Because 2% of $500,000 house or whatever it is,
It's a jump.
they're going to take it personally that their perception will be it's coming out of their pocket. But it's not really, it just means what the reality of the market is.
That's a great point. That's a discussion you should be having with your clients beforehand. If you're listing a property, saying this is where we can list it. This is what you should expect on potential concessions. We'll do our best to negotiate that out, but maybe you might want to adjust your pricing on the property as well. This is one I thought was really fascinating. We're up 19% in listings, active listings. That's a huge increase. Now we had this is from September of 2024. So that's a huge increase in the month.
Over previous September or previous month?
No, this should be a rolling 24. Yeah,
Rolling 12.
rolling 12. Sorry, not 24. Thank you for that.
It says compared to this
I don't know why that's
Okay.
acting up.
I think it's a rolling 12.
Rolling 12, that's correct. So yeah, active listings right now we're at 11,374. And then, yeah, so you can see the difference from 2023. Sold listings, you have 2,911. And that's 2,966. So we're down almost 2%, but you've had an increase in active listings. Then the median sales price is still up 2%, and that's just the median since September 23. And
Yeah, actually, I'll chime in. I think one of these statistics, excuse me, one of these statistics that's negligible is that 1.9%. That difference of 80 homes, something like that. You lenders can attest to this. I think we'll actually see a bump in October with the recent drops in rates. That could be the little thing that pushes a buyer over the edge, oh, I can now afford this home. So, once again, a personal opinion.
As you can see here, we have months of supply. So that's 21%. That's 3.91 since 2023. And then median days on the market is up 23%. So again, if I actually just dealt with a client, I sold their house 6 months ago. Now they have another house that they're trying to sell, and they're still trying to live in 2022. And I'm just trying to, we went through this 6 months ago. It's a different market, but helping people understand is like, no, it's not going to sell in 3 days. I know that'd be awesome, but set the expectations. Here's the numbers. That's going to better tell them what to expect. Yeah, I can pull that up right here. So, actually, I just X'd it out, so no. But I'll show you guys here in a second. So you asked about days on market. So here's what we're seeing days on market, depending on the price point. Let me zoom in so you can see that a little bit better. Okay, so right here, you're looking at the last 30 days on market by price range. You can see, the 300 to 500,000, you're looking, roughly around that 40 days, 500 to 740 days, which really, when you look at this, that is not a long time to be on a market. And so reestablishing.
Is that list to sold? That's not very long.
Yeah. So then you have the past 180 days. As you can see, what we've seen, there's a major change here on the lower price points. I think a lot of those ones have been gobbled up. As you can see, in the past 30 days, you're not seeing any, small price points on properties. If you find something, let me know first.
Mobile homes, I mean.
Yeah.
It's built in 65.
I think this is all.
It's everything. Yeah, it's land as well.
Well, they haven't.
I think the majority of it.
I think so.
It's gonna be scary. Okay, stay in touch.
There we go. We're doing deals in the back of the room right here. So, yeah. All right. So now I want to show you guys how to actually access this. So if you go down to the MLS, and then right here on the left-hand side, as you log in, you will see rapid stats. Rapid stats. Okay. So right here, when you come into the dashboard, you can see some basic sets of information on the dashboard. And here is the supply versus demand. As you can see, the supply is going up and the demand is slightly going down. Now, the interesting thing here is you don't see, even as supply was going up here, you don't see a major drop right here. I think what there's correlation here, but a big part of this is the interest rates. And we'll talk about that here in a minute, how much that affects this as well. This is December 2022. This goes all the way back to 2020. So you get a good view.
The shift was March of 2022, wasn't it? Isn't that when we?
March 2022, right here. So you can see where
when the rates also
we connected. Okay.
March.
So, all right. So now as you come over here, now you can change this to 30 days, 60 days, and you can see the numbers change. You can go to 365 and easy toggles that you can then pull down. And so let's just say if I wanted to do, this, you can screenshot this whole screen if you wanted. Here, you could download this and then you can share that with clients. On the left-hand side, you can do market summary. There's a few different options here. So market statistics summary, you can click on this. And then you can change this by county, city, zip code, square footage. dwelling type ranges. And so here you've got a price point. Now you pull this down and you share this with your clients, you're gonna look like a rock star and showing, hey, I pulled this information. Here's what's going on, rather than, hey, this is what my gut feeling is. Here's all the data, and then here's my gut feeling on top of that, where I feel things are at. So again, you can go back to market summary. There's monthly local market, monthly metrics, housing summary, rental statistics. If you go into new listings, I pulled some data from here as well. And let's just say if I wanted to pull this for, we'll say just Lehigh. Wait, where? Where'd you want? Weber. Right there. Okay, so now it's showing for Weber in the results specifically for that area. So you utilize this tool, it's one of the things that are included with your MLS subscription. But as we can see is we are going more onto the buyer's side of a market. There's more listings coming out. So keep that in mind on what you're going to do to help your listings stand out in the market and showcase that to your clients and help them understand depends on where you want a price point. If you want the high end of the price, we can do that. Your house will sit longer in the market, but utilize this tool for your benefit. So.
It shows what we're paying. I don't understand it.
Okay, so this is new listings summary. So this is the new listings that are in place. So as you can see, we've been pretty standard right here for new listings in Weber. It's pretty much directly across. Then you have average price per square footage and then median price per square foot. So you're seeing the price per square foot came down a little bit and went back up per square footage, but the total sales and price point are still staying pretty standard. So that's how you can tell the difference. You have a question back there.
Why do you think it's shooting up? Is it just interesting?
No. So on the last month, don't pay attention to the last month, especially on just a couple of days. Yeah, because you'll have, maybe there's a few listings that came on that are just way off. And so it doesn't depict it. So just ignore that until you're like the majority of the month into it to have accurate data.